but expectations. So that's why the morning is establishing expectations, and the afternoon is delivering. And so just kind of stepping back, our theme here is create livable communities and protect stream health. So it is a function of what we want our communities to look like, and what our communities look like reflect our engineering practices, our green infrastructure practices. And that's so we'll set that context so that in the afternoon then we get into how do we get there. That's the significance of the legal and policy strategy, isn't it? So just bring us right back to very basics again, just to finish off my segment here, which is when we talk about where and how land has developed, it's impacting on both the supply and the runoff side. So when you think of water sustainability, it's how water is used. And this is the, can you see, Tom? I think you saw this before. I'm just going to repeat a few of what I said last week, but when we get into talking about, as examples, the City of Courtney experience and the soil depth policy, I mean, that 1 foot of soil has huge implications in the sense that, if you have good soil and you have well-rooted vegetation, then you're using less water in the summer. So that's a direct relationship with sustainability of supply, especially when you look at what number it is in terms of living water smart about achieving 50% reduction in water use.
Or 50% of municipal supply will come from water
saving, conservation, right? And also, as Glenn will tell you as the day goes on, there is no grant money for those who have a supply side way of building things, right? It's I mean, the money is being used to leverage change. And on the other side, which is as water runs off, well, if you have the sponge, water doesn't run off as much, and you don't have those same impacts on the water courses. So again, very simple thinking. Where and how land is developed determines the supply side, the runoff side. So what we've been doing through the whole CAVI program is establishing this hierarchy of language where we talk about green value, design with nature, green infrastructure, and water sustainability, but they're kind of cascading. But the green value, the way I look at it is really green value, when we use that terminology, is really appealing to the development community, that as a result of doing things better and differently, that will result in value which will be reflected in their bottom line. From a municipal point, this is really what Gary and Dean will get into, is it's designed with nature, consistent with Picard's book back in the late 60s in terms of how you look at the landscape. And you probably could write this as a landscaper, right? You probably, anyway. But coming out of that is your green infrastructure policies and practices. That's what results in the water sustainability, the sustainability of the water, and that's why I had that first slide, which is you got to think about the inside and the offside. At the end of the day, your green infrastructure practices have a direct bearing on your water sustainability. So again, in terms of reminding you of what we said last time, in terms of the mantra of the new business as usual, doing things differently, why are we doing it? We're trying to visualize what this place will look like in 50 years, because the decisions that one makes today in local government, they ripple through time. And a lot of times you don't see the impacts for quite a while. So again, coming back to is it impacts or benefits, those decisions that a lot of time, the one piece of property at a time, make a difference. And so if you start thinking differently about design with nature, and in terms of what you're trying to achieve, which is a livable community and protecting stream health, that's how you get there. And just one kind of sidebar there, when you talk about, say, trees and streetscapes, you don't plant the trees because you want to intercept rain. You plant trees because it makes it a more friendly street to walk in. So that's the kind of way we have to be thinking. So again, just reiterating about what does the new business as usual mean. In terms of water sustainability will be achieved through implementing green infrastructure policies and practices. That's kind of a key message. So beyond the guidebook, again, reflecting our lessons learned. Which one is it now? It's not a very big document, because really it's just capturing some philosophy, but it's part of the branding is the fact that we do have a guidebook. It has been 6 years. We have learned an awful lot, haven't we, Peter? And it's how we move forward, not by publishing guidebooks, but by having events like today where you share the experiences and you learn from each other. Again, think about what's the ultimate objective. It's to create livable communities, changing the way you develop land, and in the process protect stream health. So here's more of a definition of design with nature. And know, in this era of change, of climate change, it's really important to come back to these basic definitions as to why we're using this language, and how a design with nature approach is a key to climate change adaptation, because so much, well, in terms of climate change, mitigation is carbon, right? That's greenhouse gases. But on the adaptation side, it's all about water. Because if you think about it, it's always about floods, droughts, changes in patterns. And so it's how we manage water, which is a reflection of what we do on the land, that impacts or will drive our climate change strategy. So in terms of the elements of a design with nature way of thinking, develop compact, complete communities. I mean, you're hearing more of this. And I think this will probably come up more in when we do section number 3. One at Kevin and Derek in terms of how plans being developed. Am I blocking your view too much? Okay. Transportation options. I can't help think back to last year's showcasing series when we had the bus right here so the bus route from Campbell River to Courtney having the internet access, and as a result of showcasing and people hearing in other parts of the region about the trailblazing by this valley in terms of having internet access on bus. Well, they're doing it now down in Langford and in View Royal, and it's one of those things where the idea started here, as far as I can tell. Reuse and recycle water, energy, and nutrients from liquid wastes and quotation marks because it's a resource, isn't it? So there's a whole shift in thinking taking place because you have the 1992, the Liquid Waste Management Plan or Liquid Waste Management Act was passed, and now we'd like to change that to being the Liquid Resource Act. And where a lot of our focus has been in terms of showcasing last year and this year has been on those last 3 bullets, which is really the protecting and restoring green space, and then striving for a lighter hydrologic footprint. And I got to give Craig Mount of the Capital Regional District, when he was there several years ago, was being the originator of that phrase, the hydrologic footprint, because I think 5 years ago when he first coined it, didn't really resonate with people, but I think you've heard so much of late, the last year and a half or so, of ecological footprints, et cetera, that probably it's becoming more intuitively obvious to people what we mean by a lighter hydrologic footprint, because that's the key to achieving higher levels of watershed and stream and wetland protection. So that leads me to talk about convening for action and why we're here. Tom, this is the slide from last time, so do you remember it? The reason we say convening for action is because I guess there's a number of us who are over 50 in this room. And so we've heard a lot of talk over the decades, haven't we, Tom? And so we're going to put down our careers where we say we have this 25 or 30 or 35 years worth of experience. And so when we get together, it's not just to talk. It's like, what are we going to do when we leave here? And that's part of the challenge for everybody here today is, what are you going to do differently when you leave here today? And I think, Kevin, you're going to pick up on this theme at the end of the day when we check back in with expectations being met. So creating that picture of the future. So there's three thoughts here. Vision, again, what we want this place to look like in 50 years. Because remember, 50 years is one house building cycle. Well, it used to be 50 one house building cycle. These days, maybe it's going to be 2, the way things get knocked down. But still, it's easy to talk about the what and then the goal. What's the goal? Well, right now the goal is to implement the new business as usual. So what? And I think it's important to, at this point, to reflect back to your comments, Glenn, which is we now have provincial direction. As of within the last 6 months especially, the language is now in place in terms of what collectively we want to achieve in this province, which is to look ahead. So, a year or 2 ago, people would say, well, what's driving it? Well, where's the piece of paper? Where's the legislation? What's the policy statement? Well, we have the policy framework at the highest level now, and really what we're talking about today is what it means, what you're doing on the ground, how we will get there. But the vision is set in terms of looking for to maintain the quality of life that we have today to ensure that it is here 50 years from now. So vision, goal, strategy. What are we going to do better or differently to get from where we are today to where we want to be? And that's the whole what, so what, now what mind frame. Because we're very good at talking about what the problem is or so what should we do. But we've had a lot of difficulties getting from so what to now what are we going to do. And really, that was at the core of the guide where we talked about, we had this mind map of how are we going to move from talk to action. And that's actually what we've seen in the last 6 years. We have moved from talk to action. That's why British Columbia is a leader. That's why we're doing better than Washington State. They're in crisis mode, right? So that